Okay, our next speaker really needs no introduction. Famous racer, Junior Thompson. Junior?
Well, I was around drag racing most of my life. Was an innovator. I had the first 92-inch wheelbase, awesome, that run, and I had another one that I bought. I sold to Big John Masmanian. Stone Woods, Tim Woods, and John were bidding on it to see who would outbid the other. And then Big John outbid the other, and he built the car, what they call a football. And Richard Sharonian was his nephew. He was the driver of the car, and they was pretty successful with the car, except when they chopped the top on it to lay the windshield back. And they had to laid it back too far, so they had to be altered. Don't be altered in NHRA events. But I was in partners with Masme and took his tour all went back east, raced all over down in Florida, up in New Hampshire, Maine, all up places like that. But I built the first 41 Studebaker that was in existence, and now you go to the drag strips, you see a bunch of them that run. And I was the first one to build the Austin too, 19-inch wheelbase. And I had good success with all of them because I had a lot of support from Iskenderian. Ed furnished the camshafts and stuff for them. And I was always successful. I remember the camshaft that I had that worked better than any of them was a Iskenderian 616, I believe it was a 616 when it had. And everybody was buying that camshaft because it was such a good camshaft, and I was successful with it. I took NHR's first little eliminator at Oklahoma City in 1950, I believe it was 58, it's been a long time ago. And I think we made 17 runs to win that little eliminator at the time that it was going. And we had it was held in Oklahoma City, and I think we made 17 runs to win that little eliminator. It was the first one they ever had. And me and my brother Eddie Thompson was my partner, and we made 17 runs to win that little eliminator deal. After we got everything all sorted out, we did real good at it. But you know, I knew all the guys, K.S. Pittman, Big John Masmanian, Tim Woods. They're all gone now, and I think me and Bones are the only one of the casters that are left. And of course, that's been a long time ago. Ohio George is still around, yeah.
He's still going right here?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember them all of them. You know, there's been so many of them that had raced with us, but I raced at Lions the first night they was open, and I raced there the last race they had. They used to have quite a few drag strips around here, but now there isn't any of them except for one at Irvindale. All of them's closed down. Lions was probably the most famous one that was running, and C.J. Hart run that for a while. Mr. Thompson run it for a while too, and I can't think of the other guy that run it for a while. Steve Evans, I believe, and Steve Gibbs even run it too, and it was a pretty popular track. I think it was called St. Gabriel. Later on it was called Irvindale Raceway, but I started out racing when I was 16 years old and have been racing ever since until all the tracks shut down where there's no more tracks running. And of course I'm a little too old to race now anyway. Of course me and Bones are pretty close to being the same age, and he still has got his Camaro. I don't have a car anymore. It's so expensive to build one, and to run one you gotta have a professionally built motor for it, and a professionally built car to be competitive anymore. It just costs a lot of money to do it, so I don't do it anymore anyway. Of course, I'm 80 years old, and I don't have the time to do it. But most of the guys that I raced with was hard racers, and that was the gasser days when the gasser was before the funny car came out. They was really the funny car of drag racing at the time, but everything has changed so much that it's hard to do it anymore. But I think Ed said he's 93 years old, still going strong. Yeah, I think the most memorable moment in drag races when I took a little eliminator in Oklahoma City. That was the most memorable drag race. Me and my brother towed all the way back there. We made all those runs, and we came up the first little eliminator that NHRA had, and that was the most memorable moments of my career that I remember. I've known Bones for years.
What's your most, what would you give advice to the people out there that would ask them? Yeah.
Well, it's hard to give advice to them. I mean, everybody wants to drag race, but it's so expensive to do anymore that you got to have everything professionally built, and it costs so much money to run anything. And there's still a few good meets around. The one at Bakersfield that Steve Gibbs puts on is a good one to go to, and it's not really expensive to get in. But you've really got to have a car like Malachi's got, because they got the turbochargers and all that stuff, which you can't do it anymore. So I guess that's about all I have to say about my career. But my wife supported me 100%. You know, when I went on tour back east from 1967. I beat John Masnamanian's name on my Austin and went back there and raced Ohio George, K.S. Pittman, Stonewoods and Cook. The Ford Gasser and Bones went back there one year with Stonewoods and Cook. Stonewoods and Bones. But anyway, that's about all I have to say. All the guys that like Tim Woods, he died, beat John, he's gone. K.S. is gone, Doug Cook's gone. There's not many of the gassers left anymore. Like 3 of them are right here. Yeah, got too old. So anyway, that's about all I got to say. I'll let Iskenderian.
Thank you, Junior. Would anybody like to share any questions or any one here?
I just want to tell you guys thank you, because I'm 41 years old and I have a 41 Chevrolet Gasser, and we are not dead, we're alive, we're right here, we're still growing, and I'm going to keep it alive.
Right on.
Actually, I had a question that would be close to what he was just said. Is what kind of advice would you give to the younger generations? You know, I'm in my 40s. I love the vehicles myself. I see I'm very inspired by these vehicles and by you gentlemen, setting the footsteps, back in the day. So, what would you say to anybody who wanted to continue this legacy, the Gassers? What would you say to someone, or advice would you give to people that wanted to continue the legends of the Gassers and try and get a little more spark in the youth or the youngsters, or even high school, college kids that would want to get involved in cars and want to get involved in this specific era of cars? What would you say would be what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, he doesn't have the mic.
Well, there's not much advice I can give you, except you gotta have a lot of money to do it. Any class that they have now, everything like Brad Anderson, I raced with him, I raced with all the other guys, and I think Brad it's been quite a while, for a complete motor from him, like $50,000, and you've got to have 2 motors, not just one. I know Bunny Burkett had one, and Brad built her for him. Brad's still in it. Brad's got a good business going now, building his motors. And I knew Brad when he did come down from Colorado. He didn't have nothing at all. He started a business and started working for a guy named I can't think of his name now, that had built cars for him, but Brad was really successful. But Brad's, I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but he's still building motors, building heads, building blocks, building everything. So he's one guy that has really progressed in drag racing, has really made a big time of it.
What the junior just said, and what Bone said a couple minutes ago prior to that, and the gentleman back said that we haven't gone anywhere, this is love. It really is. It's not something that, it's like people call it a hobby, but next to my wife, I love my cars, man. I mean, I do. And anybody that knows me, no, I mean, I love it. I mean, and I do everything we do, the Vic and I do for the magazine, we don't get paid for this. We do it because we love what we're doing. And we got up early this morning. I was out of bed at 4:30. I haven't been out of bed at 4:30 in 13 years. So, but no, you're right. This is going to be something that's passed down to generation to generation to generation. And either you love it or you don't. And I love it. And I see people in here, or you wouldn't be here today. Our next guest speaker, I don't think we're going to even have to introduce him. Everybody from his built model cars, from AMT model cars to the real cars, has always had an Isky sticker at Iskenderian. So when you start talking about racing cams, you go to him, you start building AMT model cars back in the 60s, you had that little red Isky cam, or the blue and white. So now this is at Iskenderian.
Is this the right distance? Okay. I remember I used to go to Lions Drag Strip while Junior Thompson was winning always there. It was hard to beat. And they had a centrifugal supercharger made by Steve Pick, who was a great machinist on Signal Hill. And I used to tell Junior our competition might be improving and it might be hard to win later on. Let's do a little experimenting for the future in case we have to have more speed later. And said, no, they didn't want to touch it. It's just winning the way it is. Don't bother it. Don't touch it. Well, anyway, we're mighty lucky. This sport had started probably maybe around maybe 1910 or so with people that at first was the dry lakes, 100 miles from Los Angeles, Muroc Dry Lake. They'd bring cars up there to try them out, and we're lucky to have the older fellas so we could learn off them, because there wasn't anything, no literature written up on how to hop up cars. So so when I was in 1933, I guess I'd be 12 years old, and I'm riding bicycles, and I had to learn how to fix it myself. And we saw our first little gow job, as we called them. Later on, they called them rods, and hot rod later yet. And you'd see them go by. It would be a stripped-down Model T, or Whippet, or a little Chevy or Buick 4-cylinder, and it'd zip by, and we thought, Well, it's sort of a racing car somebody's made there. It's all stripped down and lightweight and one or two guys riding in it. And we found out later where the guy lives, and we went over there, and he was nice enough to tell us about the car. And if we want to see a lot of them, come up to the dry lakes, Muroc Dry Lakes, 100 miles away, and you'll see a lot of them from all different parts of California or maybe Arizona. And we didn't know about that, and that's why we got a ride in a rumble seat up there, and we learned by looking at the cars in line and asking the fellows, what's this and what's that, and we learned about Winfield, who was our mentor, and George Riley and some of those that made speed equipment, and that's the way we learned, by learning from the older fellas. Let's see. Luckily, when I was in the grammar school, we went one day to a place called Sloyd, and we're going to make a little plywood duck, that one with little wheels, and we got to saw that out by hand and everything. Oh, this is fun, making things by hand. And luckily we had auto shop and electric shop and speed shop in junior high school, and so and later high school, and we got to work with our hands, and there was a great deal of satisfaction in building something by hand, which sometimes they've taken that out of the schools, and I think a lot of people graduating today that don't realize they should be working with their hands as a plumber or mechanic or builder of something, and they're not suited for office workers, computer work, maybe, I don't know. But let's see now, and my advice to that there's always room for new people in this business, because by working on your car or building your car, sometimes you'll come up with an unusual way to do something, and you could maybe even market that item, especially if it's a little what they call a what's the word for that?
Unique.
Unique, or what's that?
Innovative.
Innovative market, yeah. Niche market, that's it. And you could be the expert in that little niche. Yeah, because that's, well anyway, let's see, so that's the way I got interested, and luckily we had the older fellows to learn from. Another thing we do as kids is hang around the gas station where the mechanic was working and watch him, because we learned by watching him, if they were friendly and didn't mind us hanging around. And I remember we used to go to Dan Puela's shop, and he kind of liked kids, the young kids, and they used to have kind of teasing them and stuff. And he used to work on the Offie midget engines there, Dan Puela, and so that's the way we learned, by watching. I remember in grammar school I met my friend John Athen, and his brother Jim had a 27T Roadster, and they had hopped up a little, but visitors would come to see them that were more advanced in hot rodding, like Jack Andrews and Chuck Morrison, and so by being around there we learned more from the more advanced guys. And I remember going to school, walking through vacant lots on the way to school. We used to take shortcuts, and John Athens says, the firing order on a Model T is 1243. Oh, thanks, I'll remember that. Oh, there's a firing order. I wonder why it isn't 1234. But I'll find out that later. We did. So, So we'd pick up little information here and there. Let's see. I bought my first racing cam from Ed Winfield, who was born in 1900 and passed away in 1980. And he made carburetors and even fuel injection. He had patented a fuel injector in about 1933, I think it was, which was almost the same as Chevrolet came out with a constant flow fuel injection later on, after the patents had run out. And he was famous for his carburetors and cam grinding. And he had made his first cam when he was 12 years old for his motorcycle. And he was quite an expert on geometry and even found fault with Einstein's theories. He said there's some mistakes in there. That's what so, which I never understood, of course. So I bought my first cam from him, and he showed me his machine he had built. And I was fascinated by how it worked. And later on, after I got out of the Army during World War II, after World War II, I decided I'd like to try making cams. And just by making a simple layout of a cam, I didn't know I had anything, because I left the clearance ramps off and made it very fast action, and no one would buy them except Anson and Carl Orr's speed shop. I think they felt sorry for me because I had no name. Other speed shop would say, Isky couldn't know anything about cam. He's just a kid that races at the dry lakes a little bit. So I was finally able to sell one to a neighbor kid who was building his first flathead Ford V8, and he didn't know any better. And when he got it running, I saw him coming from a block, maybe a half a block away. I could hear the tappet noise. And I was real ashamed of that. That was the first cam I had ever laid out, and the machine could make them now, the little cam grinding attachment. See, I'd gone to an auction and bought a $700 cylindrical grinder and put the cam grinding attachment on it, like Winfield did. And so I made a few for stock in case anybody ordered any. And you know, they called from NASCAR back in North Carolina and ordered 2 cams by air mail. They must have thought the people in California know what they're doing about this stuff. And I was afraid he was going to ask me how much experience that I've had. And, a few months, And by golly, they reordered. They ordered them by air mail too. And I found out later why. It was because they, out on the racetrack, if a little spot opened up, they could pass the car. The mid-range was strong. They could buy a super cam, which was made for the top end only and weakened mid-range. But this cam was good in the mid-range and top end. And it didn't have to rev over 55,000, so I was getting away with it. And so NASCAR was buying cams and helped out a lot on made sales there. And I remember the roasters, they started to run track roasters here, and when the guys went back east to race back east, they were surprised that they were using Isky cams back east, because the California guys knew that you should buy a Winfield cam. He had the experience, and they were surprised that I was able to make sales back there. So so there's always room for new guys coming up with ideas, even if they're a little on the crazy side. That you might really discover something. So they asked what my most memorable experience is. Well, one time at John Athens' place, where they had a tea hopped up a little bit, Jack Andrews and Chuck Morrison come over in a real radical gow job. It's an early, say, a 1922 Model T body, Cadillac gas tank on the back, Franti four-cylinder head with Winfield carburetors on it, a Model T engine, had that V radiator that was available aftermarket, and they come and talked a while, and this was a radical hot rod. And this Jack Andrews later became, with Louis Center, opened up Anson Automotive later after the war, but this was before the war. And it was time to start it and leave. So Chuck gets out to crank it, Chuck Morrison, and it put on quite a show. It spit back a spray of gasoline out of the carburetors and made a big spray out there, and it backfired a little bit and this and that. Finally it roared to life, and an open pipe, and there's another guy down the street. They back up at about 40 miles an hour to go see him. And that was the biggest show I ever saw of these teas. That's what made it exciting. Let's see. I know a lot of times I hear, in fact, guys going to college and they take up business. Well, here's the way I learned business. Oscar, who lived across the street, owed me 10 cents. And he said, if you don't lend me another nickel, I'm not going to give back that dime I owe you. Well, I wasn't going to, I realized that'd be throwing good money after bad. So that was my first. And when I started in the campgrounding, by golly, I think I was aware of how not to get gypped, I guess. Well, so that's what, and I learned business as I went along. And later years, I learned about sponsorship. It happened that, well, when it comes to these new V8s that came out after the war, the Chrysler looked good like a racing engine, but they were brand new and you couldn't get one unless you paid brand new price for it. But Ernie Hashem up there in Bakersfield, his Chrysler local dealer happened to have a pinhole leak in the block, and the Chrysler factory replaced it with a brand new engine. And they had the old engine with a little leak in the block sitting in the corner, and the dealer said to Ernie, they were good friends, why don't you take this engine and see what you can do with it? Well, by golly, Ernie goes to work on it, and he asked me to grind a cam, and I did. And a friend of his was just out of the Navy and knew about the GMC superchargers, and he put that out in front, crank driven, and pretty soon they had a pretty fast car, a dragster. Before that he used to run flatheads. Well, down in Florida, this drag racing had now started and was getting quite a bit of interest. The good thing about it was you could run your family stock car there, your dad's car maybe, or a little hopped up car, or there were room for many different levels to come into this sport. And I understand Garlitz goes to the wrecking yard and he heard about the Oldsmobile being a good engine, and it's too late, it's been sold, but the wrecking yard has something called a Chrysler engine there, and the guy says, why don't you use this engine? This looks like it'd be a good racing engine. So he was forced to buy it. Well, he ordered a cam from me and paid for it. Later on, he didn't have to pay because he became pretty famous. So, and he started going fast. So I said, I think I'll advertise him. He was even going 180 before anybody on the West Coast was going 180. And so they said, well, he's running on concrete strips. We don't have that in California. So I would play him up in my ads, and I didn't realize what I was happening here. I'm making him more famous because even if the magazine comes and covers your car, that's only one issue, but every issue I would keep talking about his car. Later I found out that was bringing him business for his speed shop. People would come there, they figure he must know what he's doing. He's drag racing and you can give the proper advice.
I don't want to cut you off. No, you finish up, but you have all that written on one piece of paper? You finish that up, because
okay.
We're on a time limit, but you know what? I'm interested, I lost my time limit, so you can.
Oh, okay. All right. Bill Walker was one of the old timers, and he introduced me to Blue Calc, who was an old time drag racer. And he was working at McCulloch Motors where they were working on these new turbochargers. And he tells me, if you want to experiment, we can give you one. And we'll give you advice. So that's how we got hooked up with the Malaco brothers. And Al Williams did a lot of the work on the fabricating of stainless steel exhaust headers and stuff. And that's how we got associated with, isn't that how it happened? And we had the dyno. Another great thing. We used to, Edelbrock had a dyno, and he let us run on it sometimes. And later he got the government, let it be known, the government has lots of surplus on dynos, and you buy them cheap. And Edelbrock bought one, a nice big one, and he sold us that little dyno for $1,500. What a bargain. Now we can dyno ourselves in the backyard. And, but Ted Kessler up in Buffalo heard about it, my good dealer, and we let him have it for $1,500 only because Hall Scott Motors in Oakland, California is shutting down. They've got 20 dynamometers for sale, and we're going up there to buy, and we bought 2 for $700 a piece. By setting up that little dyno and Bones coming in to run it, by golly, we knew more about Chevrolet racing engines than anybody in the whole country. We never thought there'd be engine builders. I thought everybody built their own engine. But no, they became specialists who were good at that. But at one time there in the 50s and 60s there, Bones knew more about and would give advice over the phone on it, on how to set up and get a lot of power. And this was without any porting. We were going to do that later. It was all by different cams and that.